what's impacted the UK and further afield. So to start, we have 3 people have been charged after 4 Jewish charity-owned ambulances were set on fire in North London last week. The Hatzola ambulances were set alight in the car park of a synagogue in Golders Green in the early hours of the 23rd of March. 2 British men, Hamza Iqbal, aged 20, and Rehan Khan, 19, and a 17-year-old boy who is a dual British-Pakistani national, have all been charged with arson with intent to damage property and being reckless as to whether life would be endangered. They were arrested on Wednesday at 3 different East London properties in connection with an investigation into the suspected attack, the Metropolitan Police said in a statement. Iqbal and Khan, both from Leighton, and the 17-year-old from Walthamstow, who cannot be named for legal reasons, are due to appear at Westminster Magistrates Court on Saturday. Counter-terror police are leading the investigation, but the incident has not been declared as terrorism at this stage. Frank Ferguson, head of the Crown Prosecution Service's Special Crime and Counter-Terrorism Division, issued a reminder that the criminal proceedings against these defendants are active and that they have the right to a fair trial. Last week, 2 men aged 45 and 47 were arrested in connection with the case and released on bail until late April. Commander Helen Flanagan, head of Counter-Terrorism Policing London, said that since this appalling attack last week, we've been working continuously to investigate and identify those responsible. She said the support from the local community since the attack took place has been incredible. The ambulances were run by Hatzola, a Jewish volunteer-led group which treats patients regardless of faith. Police patrols have been stepped up in areas with large Jewish populations since the attack. We know that local community concerns continue to remain high, particularly for our Jewish communities in the Passover festival period, Detective Chief Superintendent Luke Williams, who is in charge of North West London policing, said. He emphasised that the presence of additional officers were precautionary measures and not in response to any specific threats. In other news, 5 Metropolitan Police officers have been removed from frontline duties after a bag containing firearms and a taser was left on London streets, the forces said. The bag, which was discovered by a member of the public on Tuesday evening, was found outside London Mayor Sadiq Khan's home. At this stage, it is believed the bag was misplaced by on-duty officers a short time before the member of the public located it, the police said in a statement. The Met's Directorate of Professional Standards has said it is reviewing the incident. Inside the bag was a submachine gun, a pistol, taser and some ammunition, according to reports. The force said at around 9:40 p.m. British Standard Time, a member of the public called police after finding a bag containing Met-issued firearms and a taser on a street in South London. Within 7 minutes of the call to police, officers arrived at the scene and safely recovered the items. We are urgently reviewing the circumstances of this incident and recognise the concern it may cause. Speaking to The Sun, a passerby saw the bag on the side of the road and alerted her partner after becoming suspicious. John Griffiths told the newspaper that after looking inside the bag, he took pictures of the contents, then called the police, who turned up shortly after. When they arrived, they were really shocked. They looked through the bag carefully and hurriedly took them away. I was told they had been left there by one of Sadiq Khan's security officers, which made sense as he lives there. A spokesperson for Sadiq Khan described the incident as serious, adding, "The Met must now take all steps to ensure an incident like this never occurs again." In 2017, Sir Sadiq said he agreed to a full-time police presence, meaning 24-hour police protection, when the risk to those around him had persuaded him to change his mind. An amber wind alert has been issued for parts of the UK as much of the country braces for Storm Dave. There are 5 separate weather warnings due to take effect on Saturday, with the worst of the wind expected to hit southern Scotland, northern England and Wales. Meanwhile, snow predicted to hit the West Highlands, Argyll and the Western Isles from 2 p.m. All of Scotland is covered by various wind alerts, and power firm SSEN predicts gusts could reach about 80 miles per hour in parts of the Western Isles and Skye. High winds will also hit Orkney and Shetland on Sunday. It is likely both public transport and road travel will be impacted, and anyone travelling should take extra care and plan ahead, the Royal Society for the Prevention of Accidents, ROSPA, has said. Northern Ireland will be hit with high winds first from 2 p.m, while southern Scotland and northern parts of Wales and England will see gusts from 5 p.m. These areas are covered by yellow warnings. Stronger winds are expected in the amber zones from 7 pm. The rest of Scotland will see strong winds from 6 pm, with all warnings expiring on Sunday, at midday at the latest. Orkney and Shetland have a warning for Sunday until 3 pm, with peak gusts of 60 to 70 miles per hour forecast and slight chance of 85 miles per hour in exposed areas. A Met Office spokesperson said a rapidly deepening area of low pressure, Storm Dave, is likely to move north-eastwards close to or across northern western parts of the UK during a Saturday evening and night, clearing to the North Sea by Sunday. They added peak gusts of 50 to 60 miles per hour will be possible fairly widely, with 60 to 70 miles per hour in more exposed locations. Large waves may lead to some dangerous conditions around windward coasts. Police Scotland said people should delay their journeys if possible. Chief Superintendent Scott McCarran, head of road policing, said stopping distances can be at least double on wet roads compared to dry conditions, and spray can reduce drive visibility. HGV and bus drivers should drive with extreme caution and be aware you may be asked to park at a suitable position by the police. He added, if you need to travel, please drive to the conditions and take extra time with your journey. ScotRail has asked passengers to check its social media and journey check websites for updates. West Coast ferry operator Calmac warned that sailings could be disrupted or cancelled. Some timetables have already been amended and the last ferry to Iran is earlier than usual. Highlands and Islands airports also said the adverse weather could impact their flights. Hills across central and the northwest of Scotland could also see sleet and snow during the weekend. A yellow weather warning for heavy snow and blizzards has been issued for 2 pm on Saturday to 3 am on Sunday. A spokesperson for the Met Office said outbreaks of snow will spread from the south during the afternoon, this becoming heavy at times later in the afternoon and evening before clearing in the early hours. Strengthening winds will bring drifting of lying snow with the chance of blizzard conditions over the more exposed areas. Forecasters said accumulating snow on roads would mostly be in areas above 656 foot or 200 metres, where up to 12 inches or 30 centimetres was possible. Between 2 inches, which is 5 centimetres, and 4 inches, which is 10 centimetres, is likely in low areas. By late Sunday, the worst of the weather should have cleared. A teaching union has warned that a masculinity crisis is brewing in the UK. Schools, after almost a quarter of female teachers it surveyed, reported that they have been subject to misogynistic abuse from a pupil in the last year. It is the fourth year in a row that NASUWT has surveyed a rise in teachers reporting misogyny from pupils, up to 23.4% from 17.4% in 2023. One teacher described misogyny as traumatizing, while others said it leaves them feeling humiliated and violated. Matt Rack, NASUWT's General Secretary, said if female teachers are struggling to contain gender-based aggression, it is a ticking time bomb, and male students need to be helped before it's too late. Rack said, we have a masculinity crisis brewing in our schools. Teachers desperately need increased support to deal with this new frontier of behaviour management. Responding to the survey, one of the female teachers said a student made AI naked images of her and other girls, which she labelled horrifying. Another respondent said, boys have confronted me, shouted at me, have had boys' jokes about raping girls in front of me, and laughed about it when challenged. Teachers reported being faced with misogynistic responses from pupils after trying to address concerns over their behaviours, with some reporting that they are ignored by male pupils due to being female. Of the 5,087 teachers who took part in the survey across the UK, more than 1 in 5 said they had been subject to sexist, racist or homophobic language from a pupil in the past year. Professor Lee Elliott Major said teachers are acting as de facto parents in the classroom, explaining that a lot of societal challenges come out in this setting. Major, a professional of social mobility at the University of Exeter, added, the reality is that a teacher these days is a counsellor, a social worker, a poverty alleviator, and a guardian of respectful values. Teachers are incredibly stretched because you need training for this sort of challenge. I think the balancing act that teachers now face is more challenging than it's ever been before. Rack said teachers need professional training, to help them identify, challenge, and safely de-escalate behaviour rooted in online radicalisation, sexism, and hate. The union is calling for a ban on social media for under 16s and a ban on phones in schools. A spokesperson for the Department of Education said misogynistic views are learned and the government is committed to using every possible tool to achieve our mission of halving violence against women and girls. The statement added that the department has updated guidance, is providing teachers with resources to recognise the signs of incel ideologies, and is strengthening guidance for mobile phones in schools. The age at which millions of people can claim their state pension is starting to rise to 67 from Monday, when the monthly payments also go up. The current state pension age is 66, but this will increase in stages over the next 2 years until it reaches 67. The first people to feel the impact will be those born between the 6th of April and the 5th of May 1960, who will have to wait an extra month before they are paid a pension. The move is designed to reflect longer life expectancy, with many younger people anticipating working into their 70s, although the government is still reviewing any further pension age increases. Peter Bradbury from Preston will be entitled to a state pension when he is aged 66 and 8 months. It is annoying. Having a thought as a young man that he would have eventually got his pension at 65, I'll do some other work and I can't travel as much as I wanted to. In terms of day-to-day expenditure, it doesn't affect me that much, but all those little extras you would expect have gone. At a guitar group at the Flory in Liverpool, some younger attendees said they believe the pension age will rise in years to come. Laura Williams, 38, from Netherley, who works in a school, said, "By the time I get to pension age, I'll probably be around 70, I reckon." She was worried about the quality of life she would have by then. The things you might put off doing until you've got the freedom, and maybe the finances to do it, your body might not be able to do them by then. The rise from 66 to 67 is expected to save the Treasury around £10 billion per year by 2030. In general, people need 35 years of qualifying national insurance contributions to get a full state pension. The amount paid will rise within days by 4.8% in line with average wages, owing to the triple policy. It means that the new flat rate state pension for those who reach state pension age after April 2016 will increase to £241.30 a week, or £12,547.60 a year, a rise of £574.60. The old basic state pension for those who reach state pension age before April 2016 will go up to £184.90 a week, or £9,614.80 per year, a rise of £439.40. Some people may have gaps in their national insurance record if, for example, they have lived abroad or taken time off to care for children. Charities have said the pension age increase will have a far greater impact in areas where forecasts for a healthy older age are much shorter and will hit those on lower incomes harder. Official statistics suggest men in Wokingham, Berkshire can expect to be in good health until the age of nearly 70, and nearly 71 for women. That compares with nearly 52 for men in Blackpool and nearly 53 for women in Barnsley. The people most affected are often those least able to adjust through staying in work or drawing on other savings. For example, those already out of work or in poor health, said Lawrence O'Brien, senior research economist at the Institute for Fiscal Studies, an independent think tank. There is a good case for future increases to the state pension age to come alongside targeted financial support for most affected groups. Previous increases in the pension age have proved controversial, particularly those leading to the WASPy campaign, among women who say they were not given adequate notice of the changes. Some people affected by pension age rises have needed to rely on private pension savings to bridge the gap, according to the IFS, but increases also led to lower life satisfaction among those who were impacted. A rising pension age also led to employment rates among affected age groups increasing by 10 percentage points, driven primarily by workers staying in their jobs for longer. The increase in the state pension age to 68 is currently legislated for 2044 to 2046, although a review will consider whether to change those dates. Elaine Smith, head of Employment and Skills at the Centre for Ageing Better, said that the rationale for repeatedly raising the state pension age was based on people living for longer, but life expectancy nationally is lower now than it was before the pandemic. A spokesperson for the Department for Work and Pensions said, "We're committed to providing financial support for people at any age who need it. Those that have not reached state pension age can access a range of support, such as universal credit and other means-tested and disability-related benefits." The parents of a student who died from meningitis B, menB, say they fear another outbreak like Kent could happen without a wider rollout of the menB vaccine. Helen and Lee Draper's 18-year-old daughter, Meg, died from menB while studying at the University of Bournemouth in October 2025. Meg had been vaccinated against meningitis strains A, C, W, and Y when she was 14 through the NHS vaccination schedule, but not menB, as this is only offered to younger children born after 2015. Meg's death came months before an unprecedented outbreak of menB in Kent, which resulted in the deaths of 2 young people. The UK government subsequently asked the Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunisation, the JCVI, to re-examine eligibility for meningitis vaccines for teenagers and younger adults. The UK Health Security Agency, UKHSA, said it was important for parents to be aware that neither the menB vaccine for infants nor the menACWY vaccine for teenagers protected against all meningococcal strains or against all of the infections that can cause meningitis. Meg, a popular and sporty teenager, was enjoying the social side of student life, but one evening she told her parents that she was feeling lethargic. Within 24 hours, Meg's symptoms, including a fever, headache, vomiting, and a rash, had worsened. She was taken to the Royal Bournemouth Hospital A&E by a friend, but when they arrived, Helen and Lee said a triage nurse selected no on a computer when asked about sepsis, and Meg was sent back to a university accommodation. Helen and Lee drove from South Wales to Bournemouth to take Meg back to A&E. Immediately it was as if we were wasting this doctor's time, and it was quite curt with Meg, Helen said. When she was confused and couldn't remember her date of birth, he was really frustrated. He asked her 3 times what her date of birth was, and he looked at me and I had to answer. She said the doctor told them it was nothing sinister, and she should return home and rest. Helen said, "I wish I asked for a second opinion. It's a difficult thing. You trust doctors, you do, because they're medically trained and you're not. You live through that every day. If only I asked for a second opinion, the outcome could have been different." Helen and Lee decided to take Meg back to Wales, but on the way, her symptoms became more serious and she was admitted to Southmead Hospital in Bristol, where she died. A spokesperson for the University Hospitals Dorset NHS Foundation Trust said, "Our thoughts continue to be with Megan's family. However, as we are still awaiting the inquest into Megan's death, we are unable to comment further at this time." Who is eligible for the menB vaccine? A vaccine for meningitis strains A, C, W, and Y, also known as menACWY, is offered to teenagers in England and Wales for free. The menB vaccine is only available on the NHS in England and Wales for young children born after May 2015, as they are seen as the most at risk. For older children or adults, a menB vaccine or booster costs around £220 privately. While menB is described as rare in those over 4, there is a second, less common peak in teenagers. The JCVI, a scientific advisory committee that advises both the UK and Welsh Government on vaccinations, conducted in 2014 that vaccinating teenagers and young adults against menB was not cost-effective. What is meningitis? Meningitis is an infection of the protective membranes that surround the brain and the spinal cord. It can be very serious if not treated quickly. It can affect anyone, but is mostly seen in babies, young children, teenagers, and young adults. Helen and Lee said that they feared another outbreak like Kent could happen again if the menB vaccine was not made available to 15 to 24-year-olds on the NHS. UK Health Secretary Wes Streeting said he asked the JCVI to revisit its decision and offer fresh advice following the Kent outbreak, adding he would follow that advice. The JCVI keeps all vaccine programs under review as new evidence and data emerges. Examples of symptoms that people can be affected by menB include, but are not limited to, fever, vomiting, severe headache, rashes, stiff neck, a dislike of bright lights, a drowsiness or difficulty swallowing, and seizures. In the weeks after Meg died from menB, the University of Bournemouth's on-campus GP held 3 meningitis vaccination clinics, but the vaccine they offered to students were for the menACWY strains, not the menB version. Nothing was told to parents or students that Meg died from menB, and this vaccination wouldn't protect them from it, said Helen. It's quite dangerous in a way that misinformation and misguidance, those students would have naturally thought they were going to be okay and go about their day as normal. The University of Bournemouth said its on-campus NHS medical centre was not able to provide the menB vaccine, but added that menACWY was a life-saving vaccination. We advise all our students when they join how they can get vaccinated against strains of meningitis and other contagious diseases, and send them reminders throughout the year. This now includes information on menB to ensure students are clear. Our health advice to students makes it clear that they need to seek medical help immediately if they show any symptoms of meningitis, even if they have had a vaccination. Mr. and Mrs. Draper are still in our thoughts, and we wish them well with their campaign to raise awareness of menB. The UK HSA said the menB vaccine was not offered to students in Bournemouth as Meg's death was a single meningitis case, adding that it fully complied with its own guidance. It said Meg's close contacts were offered antibiotics. Lee said he had felt a similar confusion was apparent during the recent Kent outbreak, which resulted in the deaths of a 21-year-old University of Kent student and Juliet, a sixth form pupil at Queen Elizabeth's Grammar School in Faversham. You could see how much confusion there was from the outset, not just from parents and students, but also in the wider media, said Lee. That confusion stems from the overall lack of information and guidance on menB that's gone back for years. The decision to not vaccinate against menB was made a decade ago. Even now, I know a lot of websites are being updated, but if you look around the amount of information and how clear that is, it's still incredibly poor. Lessons do need to be learned, added Helen. Helen Lee said it was a fatally flawed position to rely on people knowing signs and symptoms, adding that the onus shouldn't be on bereaved parents to raise awareness about menB. The UK HSA said leaflets to all parents and students were very clear that menACWY does not protect against menB, adding that its leaflets about the menACWY vaccine also made clear that it will not protect you against all forms of meningococcal disease like menB, and so it is still important to be aware of signs and symptoms. It said its rolling daily communications on the Kent outbreak were also very clear from the outset. Dr. Mary Ramsey, Deputy Director of Public Health Programmes at UK HSA, said, "We were saddened to hear of the death of this young woman. For all parents, it's important to know that neither the menB vaccine for infants or menACWY vaccine for teenagers, both introduced in 2015, protect against meningococcal strains, nor against all infections that can cause meningitis. That is why it's so important that everyone knows that the symptoms to look out for as early treatment can be life-saving. Parents of children born before May 2015 should be aware that their children will not have been routinely offered the menB vaccine and are encouraged to speak to their GP for advice." The Welsh Government said, "We take advice about vaccine programmes from the JCVI. The JCVI has been asked to re-examine eligibility for meningitis vaccines in light of the recent outbreak in Kent. Following the Kent outbreak, resources and information have been shared with higher education institutions and healthcare professionals to ensure they look for the signs of meningitis and know what to do in response." A Welsh Liberal Democrat spokesperson said, "Ministers should look at extending menB vaccine access to older teenagers and university students, given the current outbreak in Kent." Plaid Cymru said Wales must be aware and alert to public health threats, and urged the government and NHS to adapt quickly and act on scientific evidence. A Welsh Conservative spokesperson said, "If the expert medical advice is clear that extending the menB vaccine to teenagers would prevent serious illness and deaths, then the Welsh Government should not hesitate to act. We would expect ministers to follow that advice, work with the NHS to deliver it swiftly, and ensure that no family is left facing a preventable tragedy." Businesses affected by the massive fire that wrecked a historic building on Glasgow's Union Street have until the end of Sunday to apply for financial support. The Fire Recovery Fund is being administered by Glasgow City Council drawing on funding from the Scottish Government's £10 million commitment to support the recovery from the fire. Hundreds of businesses were affected by the blaze, which broke out in a vape shop on the 8th of March and quickly spread further up the street. A total of 73 businesses lost their premises in the Forsyth House building fire, while dozens of others have lost trade due to the area being cordoned off in the aftermath. 3 levels of support are available, depending on how close a premise was to the fire and the impact it had. More than 110 applications have already been submitted, with more than 50 others in progress. Firms that are yet to apply have until 11:59 p.m. on Sunday to do so. £25,000 is an offer for each of the 73 businesses who lost their premises in Forsyth House, with £15,000 available for each of the 78 businesses in the current cordon, and £2,000 for each of the 700 businesses within the initial cordon. When the fund was first announced, Councillor Suzanne Atkin, the leader of Glasgow City Council, said supporting local businesses was a key priority in the aftermath of the fire. Shona Robertson, who was the Finance and Local Government Secretary at the time of the announcement, said the funding would enable businesses to access financial help quickly while ensuring support reaches those most in need. She added that this help would begin the process of rebuilding and renewing that part of the city. The fire destroyed a Victorian building at the junction with Gordon Street, with only the facade left standing. Rail services did not operate at all from high-level platforms at the nearby high-level Glasgow Central train station for 10 days after the fire. Some properties in West Kent are without water for a third day after a pipe from the treatment works burst. People in Brenchley, Matfield, Pembury, Lambert, Hurst and surrounding villages lost their supply on Thursday morning after the fault on a key main from Buell Water Treatment Works in East Sussex. South East Water SEW said on Friday morning that water would be restored to most of the 5,850 affected properties by the end of the day. The burst pipe was fixed on Thursday afternoon, but people on high land, particularly in Brenchley and Pembury, have yet to see supplies return due to air in the system, said the water company. SEW apologised again, saying that airlocks in the system had caused problems overnight and that technicians were working as quickly as they can to fix the issue. 2 bottled water stations at Matfield Village Hall and at Tesco Superstore in Pembury were opened on Saturday morning. Regulator Ofwat opened an investigation into the water firm in January after repeated supply failures to thousands of homes. In March, SEW Chief Executive David Hinton told councillors in East Sussex that the widespread supply failures earlier in the year had been the result of freeze-thaw conditions causing burst pipes, followed by Storm Goretti. Some 30,000 properties had no water at the height of the issues, with many taps dry for multiple days, during which Hinton faced calls to resign. A woman lured her ex-boyfriend into a trap and then laughed as she filmed friends attacking him in his car, a court heard. Summer Marlbrook, age 21, phoned her ex-partner asking for help, but when he arrived he was subjected to a truly brutal assault that had been planned with her cousin David Brock and another man, Aaron Evans. Benjamin Edwards, 24, was punched, kicked and bitten on the face during the assault. All 3 defendants admitted wounding with intent and were jailed. On the night of the attack, Mal Brock contacted Edwards to say she had been out drinking and was on her own. He agreed to come to her because he was concerned, and they arranged to meet halfway at shops in Elo. Unknown to Mr. Edwards, Summer Mal Brock was with David Brock and Aaron Evans, said prosecutor Gemma Gordon. They were lying in wait. Gordon said Edwards was punched, kicked and bitten on the face by Brock through the driver's side door of his car, while Evans attacked him through the passenger door. Evans suffered hemorrhaging to his eyes, bruising and swelling to his face and head, a small fracture to part of his jaw, bite marks and a wound to his ear. At one point, Edwards crashed his car trying to escape before eventually getting away, and the police were called. Laughter was heard as Mal Brock filmed the prolonged attack until she was satisfied Edwards had been injured enough. She was heard to be calling Brock to stop as the incident became out of control, said Judge Simon Mills. In a victim personal statement, Edwards said he had trouble sleeping, suffered nightmares and now struggled with social situations. He had panic attacks and had scarring which reminded him of the incident. Gordon said Edwards and Mal Brock had been in a relationship for 12 months, and there had been accusations of violence in that relationship from both sides. Mal Brock had been telling others that he was the catalyst for what happened later. Brock had sent a message to Edwards saying, "Who do you think you are hitting my cousin Summer?" Edwards tried to placate Brock, but he sent another threatening message, said Gordon. Brock, 38 from High Street, Mould, admitted to wounding with intent. Evans, 34 from Hollywell, and Mal Brook from Hall Street, Rios in Wrexham, later admitted the same offence. The court heard Brock had 14 convictions for 29 offences, including assault, driving offences, malicious communication, a public order offence, and possession of an offensive weapon. This attack was a distinct escalation in his violent offending, said Judge Mills. Aaron Evans had 31 convictions for 54 offences, including assault, shoplifting, possession with intent to supply drugs, drunk and disorderly battery driving offences, racially aggravated assault, and assaulting an emergency worker. Mal Brock had one conviction for a driving offence, the court heard. Defending Evans, Maria Marcellus, said he was intoxicated at the time of the incident. The court also heard that he was married, and between them they had 11 children, who would be left without their dad if he was imprisoned. His wife also had a medical condition. He had suffered mental health issues and had expressed motivation to move away from offending. Defending Brock, Deborah White said he suffered mental health issues, had been diagnosed with a personality disorder, and was alcohol dependent. He had a difficult childhood and lost both his parents when he was young. Defending Mal Brock, Andrew Jebb said she had suffered anxiety, depression, bulimia, and anorexia. She had recently suffered a stroke and had needed hospital care. She has also been diagnosed with a hole in the heart that has to be repaired. Judge Mills said you all played your individual parts in a truly brutal assault. The judge added the video recorded by Mal Brock was a truly shocking piece of evidence. The biting is a particularly chilling feature of this case, and Mr. Edwards had been given no chance to defend himself, being trapped in the car. On Thursday, Judge Mills sentenced Evans to a jail sentence of 6 years and 3 months. Brock was handed 7 years and 2 months, and Mal Brock 54 months. They were all given a 15-year restraining order from contacting the victim. An amputee travelling across the UK using his bus pass says he is determined to complete a charity challenge after his home was broken into mid-route. Barry Macklestone from Wythenshawe, Greater Manchester, began the 7-day journey from John O'Groats in Scotland to Land's End in Cornwall on Tuesday. The former transport worker plans to raise money for his local rugby club that brought him back into the world after a life-changing accident. However, the 72-year-old was forced to take a detour after he was told about the burglary. He is due to restart on Saturday, adding, "The challenge cannot fail. We've got to get to Land's End." Barry said his plans had been put on hold for a day after his cleaner and family informed him of the break-in when he was 4 days into the 1,200-mile, 1,931-kilometre challenge. He said he had returned home to assess the damage and see what had been stolen, which included £450 in cash and several other items, adding that he was grateful for the support of Greater Manchester Police and his friends. He said he was devastated but carrying on with the challenge, and fundraising for the club was paramount in my mind. The intrepid fundraiser said he planned to pick up where he left off on Saturday. Barry raised more than £1,500 in 2025 when he undertook his first bus pass challenge, completing a bus-only journey from Manchester to London in a bid to improve rundown facilities at Wythenshawe Community Rugby Club. As was the case in the previous challenge, Barry said all money raised this time would go towards the rugby club, where he had been a volunteer since losing his leg in an accident 5 years ago. Barry said the club's positive impact on his mental health was beyond words. He added, "I was in a coma for a huge length of time, and you wake up and your whole life is changed. Rugby kind of brought me back into the world again." Speaking to Radio Manchester from the first bus stop in Orkney on Tuesday, Barry said, "I can't see the club die, and that's where we're going with this. If we don't get the work done that we need to get done, we've been struggling now for 2 years to get sort of connected with the council and get move on with moving into premises. The premises we have are not good, the floor's falling out, things don't work, we've been rebuffed all the time, and we still need to keep collecting money to try and get the club into a position where it is. This whole challenge is about raising money really for the kids, because we haven't been able to do the work we wanted to last year to make the hub better for them. It's just making sure that the club has enough money to function and make sure that we actually get the job done.
Let's get a nice sized chunk out of that and bottoms up.
Marks and Spencer's retail director has called for a crackdown on retail crime after a string of incidents involving shoplifting and violence at its stores. Dennis Kiev said police should be given the resources to tackle the issue, which he says is getting worse, not better, with retail staff facing abuse and violence in their workplaces every day. M&S External Affairs Director Adam Hawksby said that stores have been targeted by organised criminal gangs, leaving staff worried about coming into work. Police responded to reports of anti-social behaviour involving a group of several hundred young people last weekend in Clapham, South London. Many were seen entering an M&S. Keefe said he had written to London Mayor Sir Sadiq Khan urging him to provide extra support for police. It is understood the mayor will meet with M&S soon. Keefe said in the past week alone, we have had gangs forcing open locked cabinets and stripping shelves, 2 men brazenly emptying the shelves of steak and walking out, a large group of young people ransacking a store before assaulting a security guard, a colleague headbutted trying to defuse a situation, and another hospitalised after having ammonia thrown in their face. He added, we need to recognise this for what it is, a systemic issue, a growing issue, and one that demands a coordinated response across government, policing and industry. Retail crime has become more brazen, more organised and more aggressive, Keefe said. We need a stronger, faster and more consistent police response, using tools that already exist to target repeat offenders and crime hotspots. A spokesperson for the Mayor of London said shoplifting is not a victimless crime, and the Mayor fully supports the Met Police's data-driven and targeted approach to tackling prolific offenders. There have been a renewed focus on neighbourhood policing at the Met, doubling the number of officers in the West End and targeting hotspot areas across the capital. But we know there is more to do and the Mayor will continue working with the Met to tackle this issue. M&S Chief Executive Stuart Mackin has also written to Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood, according to Kiev. Hawksby said that while retail crime has always existed, it does feel in the past weeks and months that the problem is getting worse. The External Affairs Director said M&S had invested tens of millions into security, but that there was only so much you can do without additional police intervention and more use of data to identify retail crime hotspots. Crime and Policing Minister Sarah Jones called the incidents disgraceful and urged police to use all the tools at their disposal to protect workers and punish those responsible. We're giving police stronger powers, ending the immunity for thefts under £200 so that shoplifters can be prosecuted. About 100 officers were called to Clapham High Street on Tuesday, where young people were reported to be attempting to access shops and a restaurant. They also lit fires and set off fireworks on Clapham Common. 6 teenage girls were arrested after 2 separate incidents of antisocial behaviour fueled by online trends, according to the Met Police. 5 people were assaulted, including 4 police officers. The Met said it expected more arrests would be made in the coming days. Ahead of the bank holiday weekend, the Met said it had increased officer numbers and put in place a strong policing presence plan to prevent and deal with any future disorders. Jim Bly, Director of Corporate Affairs at the British Retail Consortium, BRC, said the incidents in Clapham were deplorable and called for the Mayor and police to double down on tackling this scourge. Labour peer Lord Walker, the executive chairman of Iceland Supermarkets, said he had always argued for more powers for security guards. You go to Spain and all the security guards have pepper spray and a truncheon. They don't mess about. Hawksby said M&S bosses have been planning to contact the Home Secretary and London Mayor prior to the Clapham incident. He called on local and national leaders to all get round the table, roll our sleeves up and try to deal with this challenge because at the moment it feels like it's going in the wrong direction. Incidents of antisocial behaviour involving teens have been reported in other parts of the country in recent days. In Rochdale, police imposed a dispersal order on Friday and Saturday after groups were reported to be harassing staff and causing criminal damage. West Midlands Police imposed restrictions on gatherings in Solihull for 36 hours from Monday after children and teenagers were reported to be causing criminal damage. The Institute of Customer Service said abuse, threats and violence had become a grim part of the working day for customer-facing staff. The business group's survey of 1,000 workers found around 43% had experienced hostility or abuse in the 6 months to October, up from 36% the previous year, with 26% taking sick leave as a result. The shocking scenes in and around M&S this week are yet another reminder that abuse, hostility and criminal behaviour towards frontline workers is far too common and all too often goes unpunished, Chief Executive Joe Corson said. Some 519,381 shoplifting offences were recorded in England and Wales in the year to last September, a 5% increase on the previous year, the latest Office for National Statistics figures show. A 14-year-old boy shot dead in southeast London has been named as Eghosa Ogbiba. Officers received reports of a shooting on Lord Warwick Street, Woolwich, at around 3:40 British Standard Time on Thursday. The boy was treated by paramedics but died at the scene. His family have been informed, the Met said. 2 boys, aged 14 and 16, and an 18-year-old man have been arrested on suspicion of murder. Detectives leading the inquiry have urged anyone with information about the incident to come forward, as well as appealing for anyone who may have relevant CCTV or dash cam footage. Customers sitting outside a nearby pub, the Greyhound, are said to have run inside in panic as they heard gunshots. Pub worker Sophia Pereira said she heard someone fall on one of the bins on the pub's patio at the time of the shooting. Pereira said she then saw a teenager run through the patio towards Woolwich Church Street. She said, "I just heard like a big bang, like a big strong boom," which was obviously one of the kids. I think jumping on the wall through the bin, and then obviously the bin fell and broke. Then he just ran off. She said about 10 customers who were on the patio ran inside panicking, adding the atmosphere in the pub was very overwhelming. Everyone got scared because they heard a shooting and they could see one of the guys had a machete or something like that. So everyone just ran inside, said lock all the doors and everything, because obviously we didn't know what was going on. An 18-year-old girl who lives on Lord Warwick Street and did not want to be named said the shooting was shocking and said it felt unreal walking around the neighbourhood on Friday. She added, "A shooting is surprising, but there have been quite a lot going on around this area down there the past couple of years." The area surrounding the street where the shooting took place was cordoned off on Friday with a dozen police officers at the scene. A bunch of flowers was laid at the end of Lord Warwick Street. Forensic officers appeared to be searching a patch of grass along the street. Detective Chief Inspector Lucy Card said, "Our thoughts remain with the boy's family and loved ones. We are aware of concern that this incident will cause the local community. We've already made 3 arrests and our investigation continues at pace. An increased police presence remains in the area." London Mayor Sir Sadiq Khan said, "My thoughts are with family, friends and wider community in Woolwich following the appalling fatal shooting of a 14-year-old boy. There is absolutely no place for this heartbreaking violence. I remain in close contact with the Met, who have been working around the clock. Arrests have already been made and an investigation is on the way. Residents will see an increase in police in the local area." Early reports indicate that the pilot of a US F-15 fighter aircraft drowned over Iran was rescued, which, if confirmed, would be the latest in a long history of US combat search and rescue missions over decades. The search operations is ongoing deep inside Iran for a second crew member, according to CBS. Combat search and rescue (CSAR) missions are considered among the most complex, time-sensitive operations that US and allied militaries prepare for. In the US, elite units of the Air Force are specially trained for CSAR missions and are often preemptively deployed near conflict areas where aircraft could be lost. What is combat search and rescue? Put simply, CSAR missions are military operations aimed at finding, aiding and potentially rescuing personnel in need, including downed pilots and isolated troops. In contrast to conventional search and rescue efforts, which could take place during humanitarian operations or after disasters. CSAR missions occur in hostile or contested environments. In some cases, as in Friday's reported recovery effort in Iran, the operations may happen deep in enemy territory. The CSAR missions are often conducted by helicopters, with refueling aircraft in support and other military aircraft on hand to conduct strikes and patrol the area. A former commander of a pararescue jumpers squadron told CBS News that a rescue operation like the reported one in Iran would involve at least 24 pararescue jumpers scouring the area in Black Hawk helicopters. They added that the team would be prepared to jump from planes if needed, and once on the ground, their priority would be to contact the missing crew member. Upon locating them, the pararescue jumpers would deliver medical aid, if necessary, evade the enemy, and get to a place where they can be rescued, according to CBS News. Harrowing and massively dangerous is an understatement, the former commander said. They added, "This is what they train to do, all over the world. They are known as the Swiss Army knives of the Air Force." Verified video that emerged from Iran on Friday appeared to show US military helicopters and at least one refueling aircraft operating over Iran's Kazakhstan province. The mission are extremely time sensitive, and as enemy forces would likely be deployed in the same area to try and locate the same US personnel these CSAR teams are trying to rescue. Iranian officials have urged citizens to find the missing US crew member alive and are offering rewards for their capture, according to state media. Laurel Rapp, director of the US and North American program at Chatham House, said that capturing the crew member would be a huge prize for Iran and would offer them a very powerful bargaining chip. Former US Marine Corps Special Operations Specialist Jonathan Hackett said that a US rescue team's priority would be to look for signs of life. They're trying to work backwards from the last point they knew that person was and fan out based on the speed that person could move under different circumstances in this really difficult terrain. Hackett said that this type of reported rescue would be a non-standard assisted recovery mission, where indigenous groups in the area could have been previously contacted, with the aim of creating contingency plans that could be activated to help with any rescues. Airborne wartime rescue missions have a long history dating back to World War I, pilots conducting impromptu landings in France to rescue downed colleagues. The US military's pararescue units traced their lineage back to a 1943 mission in which 2 combat surgeons parachuted into the then Burma, now Myanmar, to help wounded soldiers. The world's first helicopter rescue took place a year later, when a US lieutenant rescued 4 soldiers from behind Japanese lines, according to Smithsonian's Air and Space magazine. The incident also marked the first operational use of a helicopter in combat. Formal search and rescue units were first established in the US in the immediate aftermath of the conflict, but modern CSAR began during the Vietnam War. One mission known as BAT-21 led to the loss of several aircraft and multiple US casualties while attempting to recover the pilot of an aircraft shot down behind North Vietnamese lines. The war required a vast expansion of CSAR missions with increased scope and complexity. The experience helped the military refine tactics and procedures that have helped form the foundation of rescue operations since. While each US military branch has their own limited CSAR capabilities, the US Air Force has the primary responsibility for finding and rescuing military personnel. This work is primarily conducted by what are known as pararescue jumpers, part of the military's broader special operations community. The official pararescue motto is "These things we do that others may live," and their work is considered part of a broader promise to US service members that they will not be left behind. These personnel are highly trained as both combatants and paramedics and go through what is widely considered one of the hardest selection and training pipelines in the US military. The selection and training process, which takes approximately 2 years from start to finish, includes parachute and dive training, as well as basic underwater demolition, survival, resistance and escape training, and a full civilian paramedic course. They also receive specialized courses in battlefield medicine, complete recovery operations and weapons. On the ground, these teams are led by specialized combat rescue officers who are responsible for planning, coordinating and executing the recovery missions. Pararescue teams deployed extensively throughout the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan conducting thousands of missions to rescue US and Allied troops that were wounded or required extraction. In 2005, Air Force pararescue teams were involved to recover a US Navy SEAL who was wounded and seeking shelter in an Afghan village after his team was ambushed and its other 3 members killed, an incident later made into the film Lone Survivor. Missions to recover downed US pilots have been rare in recent decades. In 1999, the pilot of an F-117 stealth fighter shot down over Serbia was found and recovered by pararescue men. In a highly publicized incident in Bosnia in 1995, US pilot Scott O'Grady was rescued in a joint Air Force and Marine Corps CSAR mission after being shot down and evading capture for 6 days.
I really like the croissant. It's really, really flaky, and I'm not one for having egg and sausage and cheese.
NASA has shared the first high-resolution images of the Earth taken by the Artemis II crew as they passed the halfway point between the Earth and the Moon. The mission's commander, Reed Wiseman, took the spectacular images, NASA says, after the crew completed a final engine burn that set them on a trajectory towards our closest celestial neighbour. At about 7 a.m. British Standard Time, NASA's online dashboard showed the Orion spacecraft was now 142,000 miles, or 228,500 kilometers, from Earth and 132,000 miles from the Moon. Astronaut Christina Koch said the crew had a collective expression of joy upon being told of the milestone, which was hit around 2 days, 5 hours and 24 minutes after blastoff. The first image, called Hello World, shows the vast expanse of blue that is the Atlantic Ocean, framed by a glow of the atmosphere as the Earth eclipses the Sun, and green auroras at either pole. The Earth appears upside down, with the Western Sahara and Iberian Peninsula visible to the left and the eastern portion of South America to the right. NASA identified the bright planet to the bottom right as Venus. The images were taken after the crew successfully completed a translunar injection burn in the early hours of Friday. The burn took the Orion spacecraft out of Earth's orbit as the 4 astronauts aboard him aim to travel more than 200,000 miles to the Moon. Artemis 2 is now on a looping path that will carry the crew around the far side of the Moon and back again. It is the first time since 1972 that humans have travelled outside of the Earth's orbit. The spacecraft blasted off from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, and the crew should pass around the far side of the Moon on the 6th of April and return to Earth on the 10th of April with a splashdown in the Pacific Ocean. After the burn was completed, the crew were glued to the windows, taking pictures. Mission specialist Jeremy Hansen told Mission Control in Houston, "We're getting a beautiful view of the dark side of the Earth, lit by the Moon." Wiseman later called back down to Mission Control in Houston to ask how to clean the windows. Astronauts' enthusiasm to see into space had left them dirty. The commander had initially found it difficult to take pictures of our planet from the spacecraft, saying taking photos at such distance made it hard to adjust exposure settings. It's like walking out back at your house. Trying to take a picture of the Moon, he told Mission Control, "That's what it feels like right now." But that is no longer an issue. Another view captured by Wiseman that shows the Earth divided by night and day, that frontier between light and darkness, is known as the Terminator. Later, NASA published another image showing the Earth in near complete darkness, with the electric lights of humankind twinkling in the nighttime. It also produced a side-by-side comparison of a 2026 view of the Earth and a similar one taken by the Apollo 17 team in 1972, the last time humans set foot on the Moon. "We've come so far in the last 54 years, but one thing hasn't changed. Our home looks gorgeous from space," it wrote.
So he gets 1 point in that regard. We'll be up to 2 points, I believe, if it's after 4 p.m.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has accused Moscow of choosing Easter escalation over an Easter ceasefire after Russia carried out another deadly large-scale drone and missile attack on Ukraine. 6 civilians were killed and 40 others injured as Russia launched hundreds of drones and missiles across the country. Major daytime attacks, which were once rare, have been increasing. It's happening as efforts to end the war led by the US have stalled since US President Donald Trump and his team shifted focus to the conflict in the Middle East. Meanwhile, Zelensky agreed with the British intelligence assessment that the situation on the front line in the east was the most favourable for Ukraine in 10 months, as the advance of Russian troops appears to have slowed. But there's been no let-up in the air raids. In the Zhytomyr region west of Ukraine's capital Kiev, rescuers had to search for survivors beneath the rubble of their homes as a whole line of houses was destroyed. In the Kiev region, a drone was filmed careering towards a block of flats, then slamming into its side, starting a fire. In Kharkiv, in northeast Ukraine, a woman was killed and other people were critically injured in a day of strikes the mayor called one of the biggest on the city so far. Zelensky described the barrage as Russia's response to his proposal of a temporary truce for the holidays. Orthodox Christians celebrate Easter next weekend, both in Ukraine and in Russia. The Russians have only intensified their strikes, turning what should have been silence in the skies into an Easter escalation. In recent days, Ukraine has launched multiple deep strikes of its own, targeting energy facilities on the northern coast of Russia in particular. One post in Ost-Luga has been hit by drones multiple times, forcing Russia to suspend exports. On Saturday, an advisor to the Defense Ministry in Kiev said an industrial plant in Togliatti, southern Russia, that produces rubber products used in military equipment had been stuck overnight. Ukraine also reported an attack on a substation in Taganrog on the Sea of Azov and debris hitting a vessel. The local governor in Russia confirmed an enemy drone attack in Togliatti and said one worker of an industrial enterprise had been injured by shrapnel. A residential building was also damaged. Zelensky said the offer of a holiday truce was still on the table if Moscow agreed, and that message had been passed on if a call to Trump's envoys, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. Plans for further in-person talks with Russia, mediated by the US, have now been postponed twice. Moscow says they are on hold. Zelensky said Trump's team were welcome to come to Kiev, then shuttle to Moscow to keep the peace process alive. But there are doubts over whether Moscow is really looking for a deal, as the global context has shifted in its favour. For Ukraine, the potential scarcity of fuel and surge in prices caused by the war in Iran is a worry. Its own frontline troops need large amounts of diesel for their tanks and vehicles. Conversely, it's good news for Russia, which can make more money on energy exports to fund its weapons production and pay for soldiers. There is also concerns here about a potential shortage of US defensive missiles to shoot down the ballistic missiles that Russia keeps firing at Ukraine, since so many US Patriot systems are now being used in the war with Iran. The longer the war in the Middle East continues, the greater the risk that we will receive less weaponry, Zelensky told journalists in Kiev in recorded messages. This is extremely difficult, perhaps one of the most challenging tasks. He did describe the situation on the front line as stable, with small territorial gains in places and losses elsewhere, and suggested the threat of a major Russian breakthrough had receded. Even so, Ukraine's focus appears to be on holding the line now, not major advances of its own. US President Donald Trump is seeking $152 million or £115 million to reopen the infamous Alcatraz prison as part of his proposed budget for the 2027 fiscal year. Located near San Francisco's Golden Gate Bridge, the site, also known as The Rock, was once regarded as one of America's most notorious prisons, but has served as a tourist attraction in recent years. The budget request is seeking money to rebuild Alcatraz as a state-of-the-art, secure prison facility, with funds covering the first year of costs. The plan has been met with skepticism by a number of politicians in California, with questions raised about the final cost of the project and the challenges of running Alcatraz as an active prison. The maximum security facility was closed in 1963. As a tourist site, it is currently run by the National Park Service. Former Speaker for the US House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi, said that the budget proposal from the Trump administration was absurd on its face and should be rejected outright. Rebuilding Alcatraz into a modern prison is a stupid notion that would be nothing more than a waste of taxpayer dollars and an insult to the intelligence of the American people. The request will need to be approved by the US Congress. Previous criticism of Trump's plan has pointed to the lack of running water and sewage on the island, and the fact all supplies are required to be brought in by boat. By the time Alcatraz closed, it was 3 times more expensive to operate than any other federal prison, according to the US Bureau of Prisons. Pelosi has also raised a concern echoed by other San Francisco politicians that turning Alcatraz back into a functioning prison would mean the loss of an iconic landmark. According to National Park Service, the facility currently brings in $60 million or £45 million in revenue as an attraction. Money being sought to reopen the prison as an active facility is part of a $1.7 billion or £1.3 billion investment into the Bureau of Prisons. Announcing his plans on Truth Social last year, Trump said he was directing the Bureau of Prisons, together with the Department of Justice, FBI, and Homeland Security, to reopen a substantially enlarged and rebuilt Alcatraz. The prison would house America's most ruthless and violent offenders. Alcatraz was originally a naval defense fort before being converted first to a military prison and then to a federal prison in the 1930s, after being taken over by the Department of Justice. Some of its most notable inmates have included notorious gangsters Al Capone, Mickey Cohen, and George Machine Gun Kelly. Alcatraz has served as a location in a number of films, notably 1962's Birdman of Alcatraz, starring Burt Lancaster, 1979's Escape from Alcatraz, starring Clint Eastwood, and 1996 film The Rock, starring Sean Connery and Nicolas Cage. An incident ahead of a local football derby in the Peruvian capital Lima has left 1 fan dead and dozens injured. Officials are investigating the cause. Initial reports suggested that parts of the stadium's wall and structure had collapsed, which had since been disputed. Confirming the death, Peruvian Health Minister Juan Carlos Velasco Guerrero told media at Lima Hospital that 47 people were hurt, 3 of whom are in a critical condition. Hundreds had gathered around Alessandro Villanueva Stadium wearing football shirts and waving flags of the home team, Alianza Lima, ahead of a match against local rivals Universitario de Deportes. Fire Chief Marcos Peixoto told reporters that the structure of some stands appeared to be in good condition. There are no collapsed walls or sections fallen into the pit. Saturday night's match will still go ahead as planned, the Football League has said. Earlier, the Interior Ministry published on X that 40 firefighters responded to an emergency at the stadium involving people trapped in a structure. However, Alianza Lima later published a statement, also on X, that said, according to the preliminary information available, the incident is not related to the collapse of walls or structural facilities of the sports complex. The Peruvian Professional Football Leagues said in a statement that authorities are investigating the circumstances of the rally and highlighted its commitments to the safety and well-being of all attendees at sporting events. A French-owned ship has passed through the Strait of Hormuz more than a month after the US-Israeli war with Iran effectively closed the vital transport route. The Malta-flagged container ship owned by French company CMA CGM crossed the strait, media organisation BFM TV, which is owned by the shipping company, confirmed on Friday. CMA CGM declined to comment. It is the first ship owned by a major Western European firm to go through the strait since the conflict began, shipping analyst Kepler confirmed. While Iran has said non-hostile vessels can use the waterway, the ongoing conflict, in which several ships have been attacked, has halted normal transport activity. Tracking data showed the French-owned ship passed through to the coast of Oman on the opposite side of the waterway into Iran. It is unclear what the ship was carrying. A Japanese ship carrying natural gas also made it out of the Strait of Hormuz, Japanese shipping giant MOL confirmed. The safety of the vessel and all crew members have been confirmed, MOL said. We will continue to place the highest priority on ensuring the safety of our crew, cargo and vessels as operations proceed. Several ships that made the journey through the Strait of Hormuz on Thursday hugged unusually close to the coast of Oman, according to Maritime News and Intelligence Service Lloyd's List. US President Donald Trump has said that the US could reopen the strait, but has expressed frustrations with allies for not providing assistance in doing so. With a little more time, we can easily open the Hormuz Strait, take the oil and make a fortune, he wrote on Truth Social. It would be a gusher for the world. About a fifth of the world's oil and liquid natural gas is transported through the Strait of Hormuz from the Gulf countries. But when the conflict began in later February, shipping was suspended, leaving about 200 vessels stranded in the surrounding areas, according to Lloyd's list. The dramatic slowdown in traffic through the strait has led to skyrocketing global prices, which in turn has caused fuel prices to rise and led to fears of higher inflation around the world. While traffic is down about 95% compared to before the conflict, shipping through the narrow waterway has not stopped altogether. About 100 vessels have been able to pass through the Strait of Hormuz, about 5 to 6 ships per day. Roughly a third of those ships had links to Iran, verify confirmed, while other vessels were linked to countries such as Pakistan and India. Rapper Gucci Mane was allegedly kidnapped at gunpoint in Dallas earlier this year, leading to the arrest of 8 men, including a fellow artist signed to his label. Prosecutors allege rapper Pooh Shiesty, born Lontrell Williams Jr., led the ambush under the guise of a meeting, holding Mane captive inside a recording studio and forcing him to sign papers releasing him from his contract. Mane is an Atlanta-based artist who has collaborated with Usher, Doja Cat, Drake, and other stars. He founded his label 1017 Records in 2007, and the Williams Jr. signed as an artist in 2020. The defendants who are yet to enter their pleas could face life in prison if convicted. 8 of the 9 defendants were arrested on Wednesday in Dallas, Memphis, and Nashville, and charged in federal court with kidnapping and armed robbery. One suspect remains at large, and investigators are working with authorities in the state of Georgia to locate him, U.S. Attorney Ryan Raybould told a news conference on Thursday. The incident took place on the 10th of January, a federal complaint says, when Williams Jr. was supposed to be under house arrest for a previous firearms conspiracy conviction. He was allegedly joined by 8 co-defendants, including his father, Lontrell Williams Sr., all of whom are accused of participating in the crime. A sworn statement from the FBI says Williams Jr. pointed a black AK-style pistol at Mane and forced him to sign the papers. He also allegedly stole Mane's wedding ring, watch, earrings, and cash. The other suspects allegedly brandished pistols as well, demanding property from additional victims in the room, identified in the complaint only by initials. One of the victims was choked and injured and had his Rolex watch, Louis Vuitton bag, AirPods, and wallet stolen from him, according to the complaint. Within hours of leaving the Dallas studio, a number of the defendants were on social media displaying some of the items that appeared to be the jewellery that had been robbed from victims. Prosecutors say the rapper and the other victims believed they were going to be executed before the defendants ordered them to leave the building and go to their cars. Representatives Williams Jr. and Mane have not responded to comment.
Take a look at this. To walk that would take me 12 minutes. To drive there takes 18 minutes. Welcome to central London, ladies and gentlemen. Although for some reason...
Cuba has begun releasing prisoners after saying it would free 2010 as a humanitarian and sovereign gesture, while facing continued pressure from the US. More than 20 inmates emerged from Lima prison in eastern Havana, crying and hugging relatives who had been waiting for them all morning, AFP reported. Those freed will include foreign nationals, young people, women, and those aged over 60. A statement for the Cuban embassy in the US said on Thursday. Since returning to the White House, US President Donald Trump has made clear his desire to change Cuba's communist leadership and has blocked oil shipments to the island, causing severe fuel shortages and widespread blackouts. Last week, a Russian-owned tanker carrying an estimated 730,000 barrels of crude oil became the first to dock in one of Cuba's ports since early January, something Trump said he had no problem with. Cuba holds hundreds of political prisoners behind bars, according to Human Rights Watch, with government critics subject to harassment and criminal prosecution. Eligibility for the release was based on a careful analysis of offences, along with their good conduct while in prison. The fact that they had served a significant portion of their sentence and their state of health, the embassy said. It said the release was taking place in the context of the religious celebrations of Holy Week, which is a customary practice in our criminal justice system. Among the first to be let go from Lima was Albus Ganza, the 46-year-old who had served half a 6 years sentence for robbery, AFP reported. Cuban opposition outlet 14Y Media reported that 41 prisoners had been released from the Toledo 2 forced labor prison in southwest Havana, citing the president of the Spanish-based human rights group Prison Defenders. 6 common criminals were freed from El Tipico prison in the eastern city of Tunas, along with dozens more of prisoners from nearby forced labor centers, it reported. It is the second time this year that Cuba has announced a prisoner release. In March. 51 prisoners were set free after talks with the Vatican. In 2025, Cuba released 553 people in a deal brokered by the Vatican and the US. Trump's rhetoric concerning Latin America has pivoted focus towards Cuba since the US seized Venezuela's former president Nicolas Maduro in a raid on Caracas in January. Venezuela's interim government has also released political prisoners since a key US demand, though a prisoner rights group says only a third of those promised had been let go. Venezuela had been providing Cuba with oil under highly preferential terms, something the US stopped while threatening tariffs on products from nations found to be sending oil to the Caribbean island, exacerbating an existing energy crisis. Cuba's communist government, led by President Miguel Diaz-Canel, have been in talks with the Trump administration to try to find an agreement to end the impasse. But both sides have publicly set out a number of political and economic red lines that would make finding common ground hard. Trump has repeatedly suggested that the US could take Cuba by force and install a friendlier regime. Last week, the World Health Organization warned that severe fuel shortages meant that Cuban hospitals were struggling to maintain emergency and intensive care services. The island has also suffered from rolling blackouts that have left millions in darkness and seen rare shows of public dissent. Russia said on Wednesday that it would send a second oil tanker laden with enough oil to keep Cuba's economy going for a few weeks.
So much choice. I know being in London's a little bit of a privilege because of how many places there are to pick up from and how many people are ordering, but yeah, it's just night and day.
The White House is asking Congress to boost the US defense budget to $1.5 trillion, or £1.1 trillion, a sweeping rise that would mark the largest expansion in military spending since World War II. It includes funding for the Trump administration's proposed Golden Dome missile defense system, as well as a boost in domestic production of naval vessels, including new Trump-class battleships. The administration said it would pair the proposed increase with a call for cuts across domestic agencies, including eliminating some climate, housing, and education programs. The request, which will need to be approved by the US Congress, is separate from the $200 billion that the Pentagon has sought for the war in Iran. A summary of the budget posted online notes that the cuts will be achieved by reducing or eliminating woke, weaponized, and wasteful programs, and by returning local responsibilities to their respective governments. US President Donald Trump has long signalled a desire to increase the defense budget and boost domestic defense manufacturing. At a private event at the White House earlier this year, which was caught on camera, Trump said that military spending should be a national priority going forward. It's not possible for us to take care of daycare, Medicare aid, Medicare, all of those individual things. They can do it on a state basis, the president said, adding that the focus should be on military protection. Non-defense spending in the proposed budget has fallen by 10%, or about $73 billion. Trump's proposed budget would mark a 42% increase over the previous fiscal year, totaling $445 billion. Of the total, approximately $1.1 trillion would be in discretionary spending, for the Pentagon the highest on record. Another $350 billion specifically for the industrial defense base would come from the process known as budget reconciliation, a procedural shortcut that lets some legislation pass the Senate with a simple majority of 51 votes. The budget also requests pay rises for troops and $65.8 million in shipbuilding funding, including for what Trump has referred to as a golden fleet of next-generation vessels. These include the heavily armed Trump-class battleships unveiled in December. Trump said at a news conference announcing the battleship that the construction of the first of vessels, the USS Defiant, would begin soon, with the first ships operational in 2.5 years. Administration officials have been repeatedly warned that the US currently lags behind China in both shipbuilding capacity and total output. Additionally, the budget also includes an unclear amount of funding for the $185 billion Golden Dome, which officials have said will include multiple layers of land, sea and space-based sensors and interceptors designed to protect the US from next-generation missiles and drones. The Congressional Budget Office, however, has put the potential price tag at $542 billion over 20 years on space-based systems alone. Experts have said the total cost could eventually soak up a large chunk of the massive US defense budget.
It's not very fun when it gets in your eyes.
When Neha paid for an online CV builder, she thought she was only making a single transaction. In order to download a CV, you had to pay, so I did that and I just thought it was a one-off thing. But 2 years later, she discovered she had been signed up to a monthly subscription with the service, Live Career, and over £500 had been taken from her joint account with her husband. My husband just assumed it was something that I'd signed up to, so he never questioned it at the time, said Neha, age 50. In a time where there seems to be a subscription for everything from security cameras to meal kits to shaving blades, many of us have been caught out by direct debits we didn't even know we signed up for, and the cancellation process can require a Herculean effort. After the government announced a clampdown on subscription traps, many people wanted to share their stories. Neha says she contacted Live Career to get the subscription cancelled. I emailed them to say, look, I've not used this and you've not communicated at all about this. She said Live Career agreed to cancel the subscription, but would not give a refund. Because it's an American company, I can't go to small claims, I can't go to trading standards, Neha said. She is seeing if she can get a chargeback from her bank. Their website sort of implies they've got a UK presence, but they haven't. I know it's my responsibility to check statements, but it's so easy for those companies to just carry on taking money. A spokesperson for Live Career said it was committed to transparency and aimed to make its subscription terms clear. Information about billing, including whether a service is part of an ongoing subscription subject to auto-renewal, is presented throughout the user experience. We also communicate with customers regarding their subscriptions through transactional emails and reminder notifications, which include details about access to account settings where subscriptions can be managed or cancelled at any time. Some people say they've resorted to fibbing about illnesses, immigration, or even prison sentences, so the company will stop trying to keep them signed up. Others have simply cancelled the direct debit with their bank, but this can impact your credit score, and it doesn't cancel your contract with the company. One company mentioned by several readers was Adobe, the maker of Photoshop and Acrobat. When Carmen from London took out a free trial of Adobe Creative Cloud, she wanted to subscribe for 3 months, but she found herself on an annual contract with a £250 cancellation penalty. After a year, she tried to stop it from auto-renewing, but was told that she had missed a very specific cancellation window, so was locked in for another year. The same thing happened the following year. Carmen said, I'm usually very careful about tracking and cancelling subscriptions, but Adobe Creative Cloud's approach felt especially unfair and difficult to manage. She added that if the cancellation process hadn't been so difficult, she may have dipped in and out of the subscription as and when, but her experience made her decide never again. The government's new rules are designed to make cancelling subscriptions as easy as signing up to them in the first place. That should mean no more endless phone calls where they try to persuade you to stay a little longer. Firms will also have to remind customers when a free trial period is about to end, or if a contract is about to be renewed, and you'll get a 14-day cooling off period in case you change your mind. It could save the average person £170 a year, according to the Department for Business and Trade. But for now, consumer bodies like Citizens Advice warn people to look out for the common strategies firms use to make cancelling harder. These can include how to cancel my subscription. It's often buried and the process may require multiple click-throughs. Behavioural nudges like more colourful, larger buttons encourage you to click on options that keep you signed up. Pop-up screens will warn you of what you'll be missing out of if you cancel. They may offer you extras to stay, and you may get follow-up emails later designed to lure you back. It might seem obvious that by having as many barriers as possible in the cancellation process, companies can count on some customers giving up and keeping their subscriptions. Consumer psychologist Kate Nightingale says companies actually want customers to associate negative emotions with the cancellation process. Obviously, the core premise for them is the harder you make it in terms of the cognitive effort of cancelling, the less likely a person is to follow through with that. If a person has a hard time cancelling a subscription, they form a negative association with the process, not a positive mentality about the prospect of saving money. At a certain point, Kate says the pain of the actual experience of trying to cancel it becomes bigger than the pain of losing a few pounds or a few tens of pounds a month. She mentions utility bills in particular. If you shudder at the thought of ringing your internet provider to cancel a contract, these tactics have proven to work.
That was definitely a good order to add on. Really simple pickup.
Hiring in the US surged last month despite the energy shock and uncertainty stemming from the US-Israel war in Iran. Employers added 178,000 jobs, far more than expected, while the unemployment rate dipped to 4.3%, the Labour Department said. Analysts said the gains were likely lifted by the end of strikes in the healthcare industry, which had led to steep losses in February. But the figures are still likely to increase confidence in the resilience of the job market, which has showed sharply over the last year. It is also expected to bolster the case for the US Central Bank to hold off on cutting interest rates as it waits to see what impact the rise in oil prices has on the economy. US President Donald Trump has pushed the Federal Reserve to lower borrowing costs aggressively, a move that will give the economy a boost. But the bank has held off in recent months, citing concerns about inflation, which remains above its 2% target. Fed Chair Jerome Powell has described the economy as being in a delicate balance, with muted job creation but also relatively limited job cuts. The White House crackdown on immigration and other policy changes, such as tariffs, have contributed to the static market. The war in Iran could add to that dynamic, though it remains too soon to fully gauge its impact. The Labour Department typically surveys employers and households around the middle of the month, which was only a few weeks after the conflict had started. Economists have warned that a sustained rise in oil prices could push up transport and food costs, pushing households and businesses to cut back spending in other areas and leading to a wider slowdown. The question now is how much blowback will come from the war in Iran and the associated uncertainty around energy prices, said Olu Sonola, head of US economics at Fitch Ratings. The Labour Department report showed jobs gains in March were driven by the healthcare industry, but extended into other sectors including construction and manufacturing. Financial firms and those in the information sector, which includes film, publishing and tech, posted losses, as did the government. Sonala described the latest figures as great, but cautioned that hiring has bounced up and down for much of the last year. Reflecting business uncertainty, he said that was poised to increase due to the war. For the Fed, wait and see is the only sensible option at this point.
Hello? Jesus Christ. He got Scooby-Doo. He's just got his headphones in and not paying any attention to...
Oil prices started climbing again after US President Donald Trump reiterated threats to hit Iran extremely hard in the coming weeks and failed to give concrete details on how the war will end. Brent crude briefly surged past $109 or £82 a barrel, and stock markets in the US, Europe and Asia fell following Trump's address from the White House. He said that the US would complete its strategic objectives for the war very shortly and spend the next 2 to 3 weeks bombing Iran back to the Stone Ages. Early on Wednesday, oil prices dipped below $100 ahead of the speech on hopes Trump would say how the US would exit the conflict, but his address repeated the same points he made previously. The Iran war has severely disrupted the global oil and gas supplies. Oil shipments through the critical Strait of Hormuz waterway have mostly been halted after Iran threatened to attack tankers that try to cross in retaliation to US-Israeli strikes, which began on the 28th of February. In a speech, Trump said the US did not need the Middle East energy and urged other nations to step in to free up shipments from the Gulf that we have been seeing disrupted as a result of the war. He said to those countries that can't get fuel, many of which refuse to get involved in the decapitation of Iran, built up some delayed courage, go to the strait and just take it. Oil prices, which have been fluctuating incrementally before, shot upwards moments after the televised speech. Brent crude, the global benchmark, rose more than 8% on Thursday before retreating a bit. The US benchmark West Texas Intermediate, which has been somewhat shielded from the price rises earlier in the conflict, compared with Brent, also took off, briefly trading above $110 a barrel in Thursday morning trade in New York before dropping back a bit. The rise was clear market reality check following the early optimism for an imminent ceasefire, said Alberto Bellerin, founder and managing director at Intercapital Energy and Oil and Gas Consultancy. Trump's speech lacked a concrete timeline for the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, while a return to normal now looks months away rather than weeks, he added. In urging other nations to step in, Trump has removed hopes that disruptions to global energy supplies will be resolved swiftly, Bellerin said. In his speech, Trump said oil and gas flows would return quickly when the war ended. When this conflict is over, the strait will open naturally, or just open up naturally, he said. But Anne-Sophie Corbu, former head of gas analysis at oil giant BP, suggested it could take some time for flows to return to normal. The Gulf's energy infrastructure has been damaged following strikes by Iran, Israel and the US, and Corbu said repairing it could take between 3 and 5 years. Corbo, who is now at Centre on Global Energy Policy at Columbia, said that disruption to traffic through the Strait of Hormuz was likely to persist and that additional costs in the form of fees to use the strait could be quite substantial. She said currently she understood ships were subject to a charge in the region of $2 million for using the strait, which, if made permanent, amounts to the worst-case solution for users of the waterway.
Try and taste and test these crazy expensive ingredients and see how they are and how they worth money, I guess. Starting off in the vegetable aisle, we got these vegetable Asian greens for £4.
Patented medicines will face a 100% tariff entering the US, but companies can still avoid the taxes by striking deals with the administration, the White House has said. US President Donald Trump ordered the long-threatened levies on Thursday. The White House said the aim of the tariffs was to reduce national security risks by boosting manufacturing of key medicines in the US. The importance of the move may be largely symbolic at this point, as it does not apply to generic medicines, the most commonly used medicines in the US. Many of the biggest drug makers have also already struck agreements that will allow them to escape the levies, with more expected to do so in the weeks ahead. The goal is to bring the rest of the companies to the bargaining table, said Sean Sullivan, professor at the University of Washington and London School of Economics. It's all about leverage. Companies that commit to launch new manufacturing in the US before the end of Trump's term in January 2029 would face only a 20% tariff on their medicines, the White House said. The tariff would drop to zero if the firms strike pricing deals with the government. In previous agreements, companies have agreed to sell some of their medicines to government health insurance programs, such as Medicaid, for prices comparable to those in certain overseas markets. The US will also honour lower tariffs agreed as part of deals struck last year with key partners including Europe, Switzerland, UK, South Korea and Japan. In December last year, the UK and US agreed a deal to keep tariffs on UK pharmaceutical shipments into America at zero. Under that agreement, the UK will pay more for medicines through the NHS in return for a guarantee that US import taxes on pharmaceuticals made in the UK will remain at zero for 3 years. On Thursday, the UK government called the partnership a win for British patients, British businesses and the British economy. It said pharmaceutical companies would have stronger incentives to launch treatments in the UK, meaning patients would benefit from treatments such as new cancer therapies sooner. In a briefing for reporters, a senior US administration official said that big companies would have 120 days to work out agreements with the administration. Small and medium-sized companies will have 180 days. They've had plenty of warning, so we're going forward and executing, the official said. Richard Frank, a senior fellow at the Brookings Institution and director of its Centre on Health Policy, said it was hard to judge the impact of the order given questions about its scope, including how many drugs might be able to win exemptions and how many companies would end up striking deals. While many of the biggest firms have signed deals already, smaller businesses are at risk of facing the tariff, which could drive up costs. Like so much of this stuff, the devil really is the detail, and what sounds really good is a press release may not look the same when it actually hits the ground. While the Trump administration has said it wants to see more manufacturing in the US, that typically brings higher costs, he noted, and though pricing deals could help lower costs, agreements unveiled so far have been narrow. The White House said the threat of tariffs have already spurred pharmaceutical firms to promise $400 billion investments in the US. The lower tariff rates would eventually expire after Trump's term ends in January 2029. Separately, the White House said it was tweaking the terms of its tariffs on steel, aluminium, and copper tariffs. The changes include a decision to stop charging metal tariffs on items that do not contain significant quantities of the metals.
And for £6.50, I got the Tesco's finest luxury Belgian biscuit selection. Confectionery aisle next, and the most expensive thing was a...
Car giant Jaguar Land Rover JLR has revealed a recovery in sales over the past quarter, after restarted reproduction following the impact of a major cyber attack. The UK's largest car manufacturer said it sold 95,300 vehicles to dealers in the 3 months to the 31st of March, up 61.41% compared with the previous quarter. Retail sales, meanwhile, increased by 16.2% to 92,700 vehicles. The cyber attack saw production brought to a halt for 5 weeks at the firm's plants in Solihull, Halewood and near Wolverhampton from the 1st of September. JLR, which is owned by Tata Motors, said production was now at normal levels following the incident. However, the firm was forced to temporarily pause production in Solihull at the end of last month because of a parts issue involving a supplier. Despite the quarter-on-quarter boost, sales to both consumers and dealers were down compared to the same period last year. The firm explained that this was down to the impact of US tariffs, market challenges in China, and the planned wind-down of legacy Jaguar models. Retail sales were down 14.3% for the quarter, year-on-year, while sales to dealers were still 14.5% lower than the same period last year, including a 23.1% drop in the UK. In China, sales tumbled by 29.8% amid continued struggles in the Chinese market.
Let's really see what we're getting here, right? We do get our tiny sachet of vacuum sauce.
Elon Musk's SpaceX is poised to become one of the most valuable publicly traded companies in the world. The firm, which makes rockets, space exploration technology, and Starlink satellites, is privately held, but on Wednesday it made a confidential filing with authorities for an initial public offering (IPO), which would allow its shares to be traded on the stock market. The value of SpaceX is expected to surpass $1 trillion or £751 billion once it goes public. Musk's own holding in SpaceX would put the billionaire on track to become the world's first trillionaire. The company is aiming to officially go public sometime in June, according to reports in Bloomberg, Reuters, and the New York Times. A confidential IPO filing with the US Securities and Exchange Commission allows a company to avoid immediately revealing information to the public while it requests feedback from the regulator. The next step will be for the firm's executives to hold a roadshow, meetings with big investors to convince them to buy shares. By making shares of SpaceX available for purchase by the public, the company is looking to raise $50 billion or more, according to reports. Earlier this year, SpaceX took over xAI, Musk's artificial intelligence venture. After that all-stock merger, SpaceX is believed to have become the most valuable private company in the world with an internal valuation of $1.25 trillion. Recently, Musk's various companies have been becoming increasingly intertwined. Last year, xAI, best known for its chatbot Grok, took over X, the social media platform previously known as Twitter, that Musk bought in 2022. Emily Zheng, a senior analyst at PitchBook said that by bringing XAI under SpaceX, Musk could show potential investors that he was consolidating costs and be able to easily share resources between its companies. With its large-scale ambitions, SpaceX is in need of a massive cash infusion that going public can provide, Zhang added. The company is racing to keep up with the sheer cost of compute, infrastructure, and energy needed to expand. Earlier this year, Tesla's Musk's electronic vehicle company revealed it had invested more than $2 billion in XAI. The billionaire said in a significant share of Tesla's manufacturing would begin to shift toward building robots which would make use of XAI technology like Grok. Grok is already included in some Teslas as an AI assistant. SpaceX would also partner with Tesla and XAI in the massive chip-making endeavor Musk announced last month, which is calling Terafab. Tesla, XAI, and SpaceX have all done amazing things that people did not think could be done before, Musk said in a March presentation discussing Terafab. Musk started SpaceX in 2002 with the aim of reducing the cost of launching crafts into space, mainly by making rockets that could be launched more than once. It first contracted with NASA in 2006. Today, most of SpaceX work continues to revolve around rockets and the operation of Starlink, a fleet of satellites offering internet connectivity across the globe. But Musk often discusses grander ambitions for the company, including putting data centers needed for AI in space and building a self-sufficient city on Mars, which many experts have said could be impossible to realize.
Which one you pick up. Anyway, let's get started because I feel, judging from this shot, this is going to be less of a what meals can we make out of all of these ingredients.
Award-winning singer-songwriter Ray has topped the album charts for the first time with This Music May Contain Hope. The album, which she released last week, is her second #1 this year, following the hugely successful single Where Is My Husband, which she debuted at Glastonbury last year, and is now approaching its 1,000,000th stream on Spotify. Olivia Dean's The Art of Loving is at #2 in the album chart, while US rapper Kanye West, now known as Ye, is at #3 with his new release Bully. In the singles chart, Dean and Sam Fender's Brit Award-winning single Rain Me In is at #1, followed by Bella K with I Love It, I Love It, I Love It. At #3, Australian band Tame Impala entered the top 10 singles chart for the first time with Dracula. Harry Styles has stayed at #4 with American Girls, while BTS are at #5 with Swim. Meanwhile, the album Ararang is at #4 in the album chart. Singer-songwriter Melanie Martinez's newly released album Hades is just behind BTS at #5. This Music May Contain Hope fuses old-school jazz with an orchestra, blues, big band, and soul, reflecting what Ray said. There's a thing I miss in pop music today, which is that kind of Motown feeling, that classic feeling, that analog feeling. So I was really excited to really experiment with that quite vividly. Her previous album, 2023's My 21st Century Blues, debuted at #2 in the charts. She achieved 7 Brit nominations in 2024, which is a record for the most in a single year. She went on to win 6 of them, which is also a record. A couple of years ago, Arlo Parks found herself in a nightclub consoling a complete stranger. It was the summer in New York and everyone in the club was super friendly, she recalls, but there was a group of girls surrounding their friend, and she seemed really upset. I was standing near them and I said something like, I hope you're okay, and I got drawn into this whole tale of love triangles and drama. We were sort of figuring it out together, and by the end everyone was like, yeah, you're better off without him. So we all went onto the dance floor and celebrated this decision she'd made for the rest of the night. It's exactly the sort of experience that inspired the singer's third album, Ambiguous Desire. A pulsing exploration of party culture and collective movement, it's a departure from the tender, introspective ballads on her Mercury Prize-winning debut, Collapsed in Sunbeams, and its 2023 follow-up My Soft Machine. She taps into night rhythms, embracing the heat and the sweat and the permissiveness of the club. Her lyrical themes are familiar yearning, desire, romantic uncertainty, but there's a newfound freedom in dancing her cares away. The album reflects a change in the 25-year-old's own life. Until relatively recently, she'd never even been to a nightclub. That's because Parks-born Anais Marino signed a record deal when she was still at school. She released her first album a few months after turning 20 and spent the next 4 years on the road, including support slots with Harry Styles and Billie Eilish. After wrapping up her 2023 Soft Machine tour, she decided it was time to catch up on everything she'd missed. I knew that I wanted to take time to pause and live my life, she says. I ended up spending a lot more time dancing and getting out my head and moving into my own body. Well, what she discovered with close friends and heartbroken strangers was a sort of hyper-reality. Every facet of life, joy, despair, and everything in between, coexisted under the strobe lights. Everyone's guard is down and everyone's equally vulnerable. There's all these little snippets of conversation and fleeting, really intense connections. Those vignettes became source material for her new music, a poet before she was a songwriter. Parts has a knack for dropping you into stories that feel instantly familiar. On the captivating glitchy club track Heaven, she transports us to a gig by Kelly Lee Owens under the 6th Street Viaduct Bridge in Los Angeles, where bodies in the summer breeze are surrounded by concrete and the smell of gasoline. In the confusion and in the noise, she's trying to locate her friend, and she was like, "Look down, I'm wearing the pink Adidas," recalls Parks. That tiny detail slips into the lyrics, bringing the song to life. Get Go is a homage to London with snatches of pirate radio and a crisp two-step beat, articulating a story about the therapeutic feeling of dancing with strangers. It was inspired by a friend of mine who'd just broken up with her boyfriend, she explains. I was like, let's just go dancing. Let's be flooded with loud music and you can cry and we can just release this. Blue Disco shifts focus to an after-party at Park's house, where someone's cousin has been unwell and everything smells of chips and gin. I'm always the host because I love to cook and I love to DJ, she says. Sometimes I'll put my decks on my living room table and just do a little set for my friends. Learning to cook, it transpires, was the second strand of her plan to reclaim some normality after the whirlwind of her early 20s. I was like, I want to get good at this because when you're coming down, you need to eat. I do a really nice roast chicken. I love doing a spread of tacos and salads, but the best hangover cures a proper English breakfast. That'll get me right in the morning. The glitchy breakbeats and throbbing bass lines of Ambiguous Desire are a major shift for the singer-songwriter, but they always feel authentic. A thinker and a planner, Parks immersed herself in research. She bought books about club culture, studied the architecture of communal spaces, and downloaded legendary DJ sets from New York's Paradise Garage. Across the album, she references everyone from LCD Soundsystem and Burial to Jamie XX and Goldie, and yet there's a connection to her earlier work. Parts' breathy vocals and soul-searching introspection fit snugly within the musical world she's created. My music has always been a collage, she says. I just take what intrigues me from different genres and different moods and apply them to the stories I want to tell. That's good news for fans who fell in love with the yearning empathy of early songs like Black Dog, Eugene, and Weightless. On Beams, the album's most vulnerable song, she uses the looping structures of dance music to represent the turmoil of wanting to end a relationship. I know it's the right thing to do, but I don't want to, she repeats as synths swirl around her. I wanted the repetition to mirror those cyclical thoughts, a spiral or a fixation on one specific feeling. Elsewhere, she uses that same device of repetition to freeze-frame happy memories, representing a new way of thinking. When I'm at my most joyful or euphoric, I feel like I've just seen heaven for a moment, she says. But there used to be a thing that happened straight after where I'd think, this moment is going to end and I wish I could feel that way forever. What I've come to accept is that these moments are fleeting and that's beautiful in itself. It took me a long time to figure that out. Living in the present has helped her love life too. The recent single Two-Sided depicts a night where Parks was reluctant to leave the house, only finding motivation in the chance she'd bump into her crush. We've all had that moment of wandering into a club and scanning the room with your peripheral vision and being like, are they there? Are they there? She says, so the song's about that tension of having a connection with someone, but not being quite sure what that connection is. Then the chorus is having built up the courage to put it all on the line and say what you feel. It's just like this explosion of feeling. It's a true story, she says, of falling in love with my partner, across a laser-lit dance floor. Usually I'm not the first one to make a move, but this time I was, she said shyly. There's certain situations where pride holds you back, but sometimes you have just to shed that pride and go for it. That lack of fear percolates through ambiguous desire, where every pang of doubt is offset by a moment of euphoria or beauty. In person, she has a newfound ease and confidence that suggests her nocturnal odysseys paid off, but did she ever worry that taking a break from music and coming back with a brand new sound would jeopardise her career? I mean, there's always that feeling, especially in a period where people are constantly generating content and being prolific, she admits. But I also was thinking a lot about artists that I really looked up to, like Radiohead or Bjork or Sampha, taking their time to make records that feel timeless and generational. So I was like, I don't necessarily want it to be the most giant album of all time and be selling out stadiums. I want something that lasts.
I don't think there's any world where I would see a big Tommy yogurt, £5.50, and say, I'm going to buy that. Now, that does go alongside.
A federal judge has dismissed most of the claims in a sexual harassment lawsuit that actress Blake Lively filed against her. It ends with US co-star Justin Baldoni. Judge Lewis Lehman threw out 10 of 13 allegations in Lively's case, including harassment and defamation. He left in place 3 claims, which are breach of contract, retaliation, and aiding and abetting in retaliation, which will now go on to a civil trial in New York on the 18th of May. The Hollywood legal battle began in 2024 when Lively sued Baldoni, accusing him of harassment and a smear campaign on the set of their hit movie. He denied it and countersued. A member of Lively's legal team, Sigrid McCauley, said the case has always been and will remain focused on the devastating retaliation and the extraordinary steps the defendants took to destroy the actress' reputation. She noted that the sexual harassment claims were dropped, not because the defendants did nothing wrong, but because of a technicality. Lively plans to testify during the trial, McCauley said, and would continue to shine a light on this vicious form of online retaliation. In a statement, Baldoni's legal team said it was grateful to the court for its careful review of facts, law, and voluminous evidence that was provided. What's left is a significantly narrowed case, and we look forward to presenting our defence to the remaining claims in court, his attorneys said. A judge last year dismissed Baldoni's $400 million or £295 million counter lawsuit against Lively, which alleged civil extortion, defamation, and invasion of privacy. The case stems from interactions between Baldoni and Lively on the set of It Ends With Us, an adaptation of a best-selling Colleen Hoover novel. The film features Lively as the main character, Lily Bloom, a young woman who grew up witnessing domestic abuse and finds herself in the same position years later. Lively's legal team had accused Baldoni and his film studio, Wayfarer, of planning to wreck her reputation, including by social media manipulations and using friendly journalists to sow certain narratives. She said details of the allegations in a New York Times article published before her lawsuit. Lively filed a lawsuit against Baldoni's Wayfarer Studios in December 2024, alleging he sexually harassed her on set and retaliated against her for bringing those complaints, among other allegations. In his 152-page opinion on Thursday, Judge Lehman listed a host of reasons for dismissing the many allegations against Baldoni. For one, he said harassment claims Lively brought against Baldoni under California law did not hold up because the filming, where the misconduct allegedly occurred, took place in New Jersey. None of these acts of occurrences provides the substantial connection to California needed to sustain Lively's sexual harassment claims. The judge also said Lively was ineligible to bring certain claims of harassment and retaliation because she was an independent contractor rather than an employee. Lively has also accused Baldoni's lawyer Brian Freeman of defaming her in a series of statements, but Lehman said that because these statements and others directly referred to the allegations Baldoni was facing in court, Lively's claims of defamation did not hold up. The judge said some of the retaliation claims Lively brought, in which she accuses Baldoni and his public relations team of engaging in a coordinated campaign to attack her character and reputation, were worthy of trial. To be sure, much of what Lively claims about is not actionable. The Wayfarer parties were entitled to engage public relations and crisis management specialists to protect their reputations. Lyman wrote, However, certain conduct at least arguably crossed the line. Shortly after Lively's lawsuit, Baldoni brought defamation cases against Lively, her husband Ryan Reynolds, and their publicist, claiming that they were aiming to ruin his career and reputation with the allegations, as well as the New York Times. He alleged that Lively stole the film from him and Wayfarer by threatening not to promote it, and that she and others perpetuated a false narrative that Baldoni had harassed her and launched a smear campaign against her. But in June, Lyman dismissed Baldoni's lawsuit, saying his team had not adequately alleged that Lively's threats were wrongful extortion, and rather than legally permissible hard bargaining or renegotiation of working conditions. Evidence in the legal battle has involved texts between Lively and Taylor Swift about Baldoni. Irish rock legends U2 have released their second surprise EP of 2026, with the 6-track Easter Lily coming just over 40 days after Days of Ash. After a quiet period for the band as drummer Larry Mullen Jr. recovered from neck surgery, the 2 EPs followed confirmation last year that a new studio album is being recorded. Described by singer Bono as a noisy, messy, unreasonable, colourful record, it is expected later this year. He has described Easter Lily as coming from a more intimate place with songs about friendship, faith, endurance, and renewal. This year's EPs are U2's first collections of newly written material since 2017. The EP comes along with a digital e-zine edition of U2's fanzine, Propaganda. In the e-zine, the band's guitarist The Edge said if Days of Ash was about a world in trauma, then Easter Lily is about where the band goes for strength to walk through this world. Speaking ahead of it, Hot Press deputy editor Stuart Clark said, "I really like it. I think with the other 6 songs released in February, you feel like the fire is in the belly. I suppose when they went and did the Joshua Tree tour, you thought, are they going to retreat into the back catalogue a wee bit? And maybe for a few years they did. But throughout their career, U2 have always been about the new album, the next bunch of songs." He said the songs were obviously deeply personal, and said there has always been a religious element to their work. What I like about is that it sounds fresh, but there's still the 80s guitar jangle. They're not pretending to be 20 anymore, but there are nods to really classic U2. It feels familiar, while lyrically they are writing about their age. Clark added, "It sounds like they're being very productive and maybe a little liberated, because before they were a band that had to plan an album release, tour it for an X amount of years, then repeat the cycle." He said the return of Larry Mullen Jr. in fearsome form was significant. "It's always been the 4, rarely have bands been so deeply rooted in friendship," he said. "You thought if for some reason Larry wasn't able to come back and continue, you do wonder when would they have the same appetite they obviously have at the moment." He said the band's ability to avoid leaks ahead of the release of the 2 EPs was impressive. In an industry with so much scrutiny and so many people around the place with camera phones, they've been really good at keeping things secret. When those tracks came out earlier this year, normally you get a bit of advance warning. The fan sites hints, but they really have managed to keep these concerns and collections of songs coming under the radar. Other reviews of Easter Lily have been generally favourable. The Irish Times describes it as an increasingly endearing, honest, questing record about friendship, faith, art, meaning, and appropriately for Easter, death, and the possibility of rebirth. Reviewer Patrick Frean adds they have taken on a more euphoric register as they've aged. Music magazine Mojo says the EP is their best collection of songs in decades, while the Days of Ash material landed like news bulletins from the world's multiple conflict zones, naming names, taking sides. This latest EP is a dispatch from the internal frontline, testing whether ties of faith and friendship will suffice in those dark times. Variety says the band is really starting to prolifically make up for lost time. With this release, U2 has bookended Lent with 2 different collections. Formed in Dublin in 1976, U2 emerged as one of the world's top rock bands, selling more than 175 million albums. They've also won 22 Grammy Awards and have topped the music charts on both sides of the Atlantic. Bono, who's Paul Hewson, The Edge, David Evans, Adam Clayton, and Larry Mullen Jr. have remained members for 5 decades. The latest album, 2023's Songs of Surrender, is a collection of re-recorded songs. Prior to that was 2017's Songs of Experience, their 14th studio album. Easterly is available now as a digital download and across streaming platforms. When Katie's older brother Harrison told her he'd enter them into race across the world, she wasn't filled with enthusiasm. The BBC show challenges pairs of travellers to tackle an intrepid expedition with no phone and limited cash. 5 teams compete for a £20,000 cash prize by attempting to be the first to navigate more than 12,000 kilometres or 7,450 miles across Europe and Asia. I was just super nervous and I hadn't really watched it before, recalls 21-year-old Katie. I was in denial that was going on the show until the start line, to be honest. Harrison was the real driving force. Being dropped into an unfamiliar country with a daily budget of less than £26 each, which can only be topped up by taking on odd jobs, makes for great entertainment if you're watching it from home. But duos in previous series have been pushed to their physical and emotional limits, as they miss connections or end up losing hours after following bad directions. However, it is a chance to bond and see new places, something siblings from Manchester, Katie and Harrison, wanted to do, in contrast to the stereotype of bickering brothers and sisters. Account manager Katie says spending every day with her brother was actually the easiest part. We just knew each other so well and we're just like an extension of each other, she says, and she thinks their bickering can actually be a help. The meaner we are to each other, the better we get along. Other siblings may use that as a fight, but the meaner we are, the stronger our relationship is. Harrison says one of his biggest challenges was persuading his sister to take part in the show in the first place. I know she's always wanted to go travelling, and this was like the perfect opportunity for her to go and do it, says the 24-year-old finance assistant. I knew she loved the travelling aspect, but it was a lot of forcing her to fill out application forms and come and do interviews with me. I think as the process went on, she got a lot more confident in herself. Harrison says sibling spats were the least of the pair's worries as they took on the voyage. Previous seasons have required contestants to resort to old-fashioned methods to get around, including hitchhiking and relying on the kindness of strangers. Harrison describes the experience as exhausting. You're never local to anywhere, you never have any idea, he says. If you want to find out where the bathroom is or shop is, you've got to go and ask someone, and that is socially exhausting and draining. You can't account for this or the mental situation that the race puts you in that whole time. Harrison says the average age of the contestants, one of the youngest ever seen of the programme, was a positive. We are quite young, but then when you see all the others on the start line and you realise how young they are, it makes you feel a little bit more at ease, he said. But if Harrison's strategy was scoping out the competition on the start line, Katie's was a lot more practical. Don't lose the money, the map, or the passports. This was my only tactic, she says.
Smells absolutely atrocious. Yeah, come on then. It's definitely weird. I don't know if milk is the right thing to mix this with. I can see it being okay.
Actor Jamie Bell is set to star in the new TV series of Peaky Blinders, which will be set in the 1950s. The next generation of the Shelby family will see Bell, known for his roles in Rocketman and All of Us Strangers, take on the role of Duke Shelby in 2 new series of the smash hit show. Stranger Things star Charlie Heaton is also confirmed to join the cast, alongside Downton Abbey actress Jessica Brown Finley and The Day of the Jackal star Lashana Lynch. The story of the Birmingham-based crime family will be set 10 years after current movie Peaky Blinders: The Immortal Man. The new series will explore the aftermath of World War II on the city as it follows the older, wiser, more ambitious and more dangerous Duke. It will also feature the TV debut of actor Lucy Karachewski. Knight said, "I'm thrilled that we are announcing a new era of Peaky Blinders, moving the story to post-war Birmingham in the early 1950s. We're incredibly fortunate to have Jamie Bell taking the role of Tommy Shelby's oldest son, Duke, and to have Charlie Heaton also leading the cast. There are more exciting cast announcements to come, and Peaky is on the road again." Production of the series is the first commission after a new BBC partnership agreement signed with West Midlands Combined Authority and creates Central to expand BBC and partner production backed by an annual £40 million investment into the West Midlands. Produced by Banijay's UK's Kudos and Garrison Drama for the BBC and Netflix, the new series is being filmed in and around Digbeth Lock Studios, close to Birmingham city centre. The two series will each feature 60-minute episodes and will premiere on BBC iPlayer and BBC One in the UK on Netflix globally. Okay, so that's a lot of the news that I've covered today. I'd love to know your opinions on any of the stories that we've dealt with, anything to do with the fuel issues and the concerns that people have still within the environment. That is the Strait of Hormuz, and any other situations you've had in your own country or potential fears about what's actually happening within the UK or abroad, including, for example, the abuse that a lot of teachers are getting from male students. Put those in the comments down below. Make sure to like the video. I will be doing more live streams in the future. And if you can watch another video either at the end screen or actually on my main channel, that'll help to boost the channel's watch time and support me into becoming a full-time creator.